Welcome back to my disembodied voice. Now, let me be clear from the outset. If you are looking for a video about how dinosaurs went extinct, then you will be sorely disappointed, dear viewer. This video is actually about a psychological term which I am going to discuss in relation to the Jurassic Park and Jurassic World franchise in both its story and characters, and also its diminishing returns in terms of either quality or general box office. So for today's video, join me as we look at behaviour which doesn't die even though it should. Now, quick intro this week because we're going to get straight into it because we've got a lot to cover. And once I warn thee of spoilers ahoy, let's start as ever by looking at the flow-through chart we will be following today, which is resistance to extinction, conditioning, more teeth, stop. Right then, let's crack on. Now, in behavioural psychology, particularly in classical conditioning and operant conditioning, which we will explain later, don't worry about that, extinction means the gradual weakening and disappearance of a learned behaviour once reinforcement of the unconditioned stimulus is removed. And when something becomes resistant to extinction, it refers to how a persistent and learned behaviour remains even after the reinforcement has stopped. To put this in layman's terms, some behaviours take a long time to fade away, and this can cause regression, problematic coping, and a whole host of other issues. Now, Jurassic Park and Jurassic World both deal with dinosaurs who, spoiler alert, went extinct millions of years ago. I'm sure you're aware of that. And whilst Jurassic Park was a truly wonderful movie which captured imagination and redefined special effects in 1993, its subsequent sequels and mishandling of the franchise has caused a downturn in quality which, even while some have been box office successes, the overall quality of the movies remains an ongoing problem. And that's because once the wonder of seeing dinosaurs on screen from Michael Crichton's brilliant idea of a dinosaur theme park has been done in the first movie, where do you go with it? How do you continue to find new ideas? How do you adapt new movies into something fresh? And the answer actually mirrors the protagonist's and antagonist's journey in Jurassic Park and Jurassic World. Now, recently we have just had the 7th film in the franchise, and that is Jurassic World Rebirth, which starred Black Widow herself and featured a whole new island of the worst dinosaurs, which had something to do with DNA for an illness, a family holiday for a group of people, a mutant called the Disappointing Rex, the Distortus Rex, and the usual capers of being food-shaped humans in a jungle full of carnivores. Now, Rebirth has just taken about $830 million worldwide at the box office, and while streaming, piracy, new viewing habits, cost of living and many other things play a part in the modern day box office returns, the overall take of Jurassic World Rebirth is half the box office of the original Jurassic World, which came out a decade ago. For the record, and to make it clear, Jurassic World made $1.6 billion. Fallen Kingdom, the sequel to Jurassic World, made $1.3 billion, and the massive act of franchise self-harm that was Jurassic World Dominion took $1 billion at the box office. Now, I love dinosaurs and I always will. One of my first ever toys as a kid was a plush T-Rex, and when my own child was born, they slept with a black plush T-Rex for many, many years, and the bedtime stories often revolved around dinosaurs. We also watched many movies together and TV shows and had a shared love of dinosaurs because you can never get tired of prehistoric times and the wonder that these creatures once actually walked our planet. But the dinosaurs the characters of the original movies and the creative minds behind the whole franchise have a problem which is now heading towards a slow downfall, and the psychological term for that is resistance to extinction. A learned behaviour continues to be displayed when the consequences that originally strengthened it are no longer present. Now, in terms of behaviour, reinforcement is assumed to strengthen operant behaviour in the sense of increasing its resistance to disruption. The behaviour is defined by an antecedent stimulus, which means something that occurs previously to the behaviour and acts as a trigger. And the reinforcing consequences of that response is what happens next, and these can be either negative or positive. Now, in psychology, resistance to extinction is used to assess the strength of a habit or behaviour and is used in clinical applications so that healthcare workers can reduce or eliminate problem behaviours in clinical settings, such as treating phobias or some attention-seeking behaviours in children, and even maladaptive presentation in personality disorders. Now, behaviours that are more resistant to extinction continue for a longer time during the extinction process, and for some can even be lifelong. And before we get to Jurassic Park and Jurassic World, let's look at the triumvirate of mechanisms that are involved in something that is resistant to extinction. Type of reinforcement. Behaviours reinforced with highly motivating or unpredictable rewards persist longer. Strength of conditioning. Stronger associations of highly rewarding or emotionally intense reinforcers take longer to extinguish. History of reinforcement. Longer reinforcement histories can lead to more resistant behaviours. In other words, we all respond to a certain type of stimulus. That stimulus has a level of strength, and that strength is due to its history of rewards and reinforcement for the individual. Okay, let's come to Jurassic Park. In Jurassic Park, both the dinosaurs and the humans show behaviours that are resistant to extinction because of reinforcement histories and deep survival drives. The entire theme of the movie, life persists, life finds a way, despite human control, is basically an illustration of resistance to extinction. However, in terms of psychology, resistance to extinction is a principle that is vividly illustrated where both the dinosaurs and the humans demonstrate behaviours that continue despite repeated failure or negative consequences. For the dinosaurs, it's their survival instincts and predatory behaviours. The velociraptors continue to stalk and pursue humans even when the prey repeatedly escapes, and this persistence can be explained by intermittent reinforcement. In evolutionary history, hunting is only sometimes successful, so the raptors are intuitively wired to keep trying because eventually the behaviour will pay off. And in similar terms, the Tyrannosaurus rex repeatedly chases vehicles or moving objects even when the effort does not result in food. These behaviours persist because movement has historically been reinforced by successful hunts for the tyrannosaur, who so far has lived in captivity and been fed. But the human characters also reveal their resistance to extinction. John Hammond clings to his vision of a safe dinosaur theme park despite clear evidence of danger and the threat to his grandchildren. His belief is reinforced by earlier scientific and financial successes, making his optimism resistant to disconfirmation and, of course, extinction. At a broader level, Jurassic Park itself embodies resistance to extinction. Despite human efforts to control or eliminate them, the dinosaurs adapt and persist. A cinematic echo of the principle that once life is reinforced by survival, it becomes incredibly difficult to extinguish. Overall, Jurassic Park provides a compelling illustration of resistance to extinction, showing how both biological instincts and human ambitions can endure long after reinforcement has ceased or turned into something punitive. Let's come to Jurassic World. Now, the original Jurassic Park has already failed, and so has the abortive attempt to relocate the T-Rex to the mainland and open the amphitheatre in The Lost World, but the new CEO has pushed ahead and we now have a fully functioning theme park. Finances and successes are the stimulus and rewards, and even for a few months or years of the park being open, it's created an outcome which shows massive rewards. However, across all 7 of these films, another idea which is resistant to extinction is that the carnivorous dinosaurs create the most hype, regardless of the fact that they are the most dangerous to keep in both Jurassic Park and Jurassic World, and also in the San Diego incident, because each of those has resulted in massive casualties from either T-Rexes, Velociraptors, Indominus Rexes, and so forth.
Taking dinosaurs off this island is the worst idea in history of bad ideas.
Okay, so the stimulus is money. The strength is the reaction to super predators, and so the reinforcement is that, despite the risks and repeated loss of life, the park needs more predators to keep that wonderful money rolling in. More teeth, basically, which we will come to shortly. And when we will come back to the franchise as a whole, you'll see how this resistant to extinction mentality of needing more carnivores also mirrors what is slowly giving the franchise diminishing returns. Basically, Jurassic Park and Jurassic World use dinosaurs as a mirror of human psychology. Both the creatures and the people in the story resist extinction, whether biological, technological, psychological, or existential. Okay, but what causes behaviour? What makes us act in a certain way? Well, that comes down to conditioning. Classical conditioning is where an involuntary response is linked to a new stimulus. And operant conditioning is where a behaviour is associated with a consequence, be it positive or negative. In the early 1900s, Ivan Pavlov coined classical conditioning, and this was a learning by association. This was about pairing a neutral stimulus with an unconditioned stimulus that naturally and ultimately produces a conditioned response. Over time, the neutral stimulus becomes a conditioned stimulus, which triggers a conditioned response. The most famous example of this is Pavlov's dogs, where a bell, the neutral stimulus, was paired with food, the unconditioned stimulus, which produced natural salivation, the unconditioned response. Eventually, the bell alone caused salivation without the presence of food, as the animals had been conditioned to respond to the bell based upon the association of food with the sound. So classical conditioning is involuntary, automatic responses, but operant conditioning from Burrus Frederick Skinner in 1930 talked about behaviours which are strengthened or weakened based upon reinforcement or punishment, positive or negative, in other words. Now, positive reinforcement, such as adding something pleasant, such as an economic reward or food or anything which triggers a nice dopamine hit, means we have a stimulus which should engender a reward. In other words, if I behave and do my homework every day, I get money or maybe some chocolate. However, if I act out, I get a negative reinforcement. So if I don't do my homework, then I don't get any TV before bedtime and I don't get any nice treats. These types of reward and punishment are the cornerstone in boundary setting, and when we come to things that are resistant to extinction, this means the behaviour will carry on even when the stimulus and or the reward is removed. In the movies, the dinosaurs go through lots of conditioning issues, as any animal bred in captivity would. In Jurassic Park, the raptors and the Rex are conditioned through how their food is delivered, but also through the electric fences, and they know that touching the fence hurts. For the T-Rex, it certainly stops, but once the power goes out, and the dinosaurs realise something is different, one poke at the fence reveals it's harmless and the punishment negative problem has been removed. Once they escape the fences, they suddenly have positive reinforcement of roaming the land and hunting whatever they like, especially when it's tasty humans. In Jurassic World, for the Indominus Rex, that thing lives alone and is fed by a crane. It has no concept of the outside world. The crane produces classical conditioning as it delivers food, so once it hears the noise, its body will start producing the necessary chemical procedures for eating. However, the Indominus Rex has no relationship with anything and no operant conditioning, which Owen does with the raptors, and so it is antisocial, aggressive, violent, and once it escapes, everything is operant. Basically, it's testing out, it's manipulating the environment, it's seeing what it gets from rewards, what gets it hurt, what gives it the advantage of food, what's fun, what's not. To be fair to Jurassic World, whatever its faults are, Owen Grady explains this at numerous points in the film. When he first meets the Indominus Rex and he sees the crane, and also when he's trying to explain why it's acting like it is in the open world. However, in Jurassic Park, John Hammond suffers resistance to extinction as he sees catastrophe after catastrophe and continues to believe his park will work. At the start of Jurassic Park, a worker is killed by a velociraptor, but that's a teething problem, pardon the pun. Then the park tour is a no-show. Then the dinosaurs escape. Then people get eaten, and each time one of these major catastrophes happen, he just keeps thinking how eventually it will go right. Spared no expense. It'll be fine. He has been shown that life finds a way. He has been shown that nature will consume his artificial world, and rather than a death or tragedy being the response needed to get him to stop, the conditioning of a tragedy merely leaves him more determined to act out his fantasy of getting this park up and running. For Hammond, his dreams are economic rewards and the magic of playing God, and all these are resistant to extinction, no matter how much death he creates or how he and his own family are nearly killed or overrun by the dinosaurs. And put that into context, his own grandchildren are out there, potentially T-Rex food, and he's still sat there going, I've got control, the park's going to work. And that attitude of John Hammond actually becomes a bit of a meta problem for the movies in general as we look at what has been the problem in the sequels. And we come to more teeth. Each movie ups the ante with more or bigger carnivores which are supposed to attract wonder but end up ruining the park and ultimately the franchise itself. Jurassic Park's very logo is a T-Rex skeleton, and when Hammond says, "We have a T-Rex," every kid in the world, and even Alan Grant, just goes gooey and weak at the knees at the thought of seeing their favourite dinosaur. The T-Rex is the king of all dinosaurs, and no matter what we discover since, or how big the new discoveries are, Tyrannosaurus Rex is king. In Jurassic Park, whilst the raptors are significantly shown as highly intelligent and dangerous, it's the T-Rex which first breaks out and causes the most carnage. By the Lost World, we get 2 T-Rexes. Come Jurassic Park 3, we get Asset 87, which is a specifically engineered Spinosaurus, which is bigger, more dangerous, and even kills a T-Rex to show just how dominant it is. By the time of Jurassic World, we get the Indominus Rex, which is a hybrid of mutated DNA and is made as a new attraction as the audience is demanding more teeth and more wonder. And whilst Fallen Kingdom is somewhat of a downsize in this theory with the Indoraptor, it's still a fearsome predator made from cloning, made specifically for investors and for the parks to be a success. And it becomes the main villain of the movie and nearly kills our protagonists. In Jurassic World Dominion, a truly woeful third entry into the franchise, we are introduced to the largest carnivore so far discovered, the Giganotosaurus. And in Jurassic World Rebirth with Black Widow, we get the ultimate mutant, sort of a Star Wars Rancor crossed with the Elephant Man, called the D-Rex, which stands for the dissatisfying Rex. The Distortus Rex. In the movies, the scientists are doing what scientists do by pushing boundaries, making new discoveries, and creating bigger and more dangerous monsters. However, this creates its own resistant to extinction problem. The bigger the carnivores, the more people die, and the more the park fails. But rather than just make smaller carnivores or stick to aquatic monsters or herbivores, the stimulus of seeing people die doesn't stop this scientific procedure of making bigger, badder, more teeth. So the stimulus should stop the science and the executives from making these dinosaurs, but they don't. Despite the stimulus being absolute carnage, death and tragedy, they keep making more of them. Therefore, it has become resistant to extinction. And as we come to our fourth wall break and come into the real world, we are experiencing the same problem with the Jurassic World franchise. Now, I don't normally review movies, and this is merely an opinion more than a review, but both Jurassic Park 3 and Jurassic World are really more big budget monster movies than Jurassic Park movies. In other words, the series DNA, the Spielbergian wonder, the depth of character, the very notion behind science and nature and chaos theory all get lost for more teeth. Oh wow, a big Rex fighting a bigger dinosaur. Oh, even more dinosaurs on screen. It's sequel making 101. More, bigger, faster, and it really is slowly killing the series. The writers are missing the depth, the horror, and the sheer magic crossed with the ghastly reality of bringing dinosaurs back again and again, and, like the fictional scientists who are making more teeth, the writer's answer in each film is to just keep giving us bigger dinosaurs with more teeth, and it's getting repetitive. In Rebirth, whilst Gareth Edwards does scale brilliantly and films with beauty, the D-Rex, or the Dreadful Rex, the Distortus Rex, is poor. The film could have gone in so many different ways. We could have had a family marooned, and then we meet Black Widow and her crew of mercenaries and know very little about them. Are they good or bad? What are they there for? And we could have learned as we went on, discovered character, had a central heart of the family, and learned and seen these mercenaries and let them develop. And the main mutant could have been like the shark in Jaws, all POV and horror and tease. Even the Mosasaurus is brought back, despite the prehistoric seas having a melee of wonderful creatures, from Predator X to plesiosaurs to Lilopyridons and megalodons, and whilst we see a dead Dunkleosteus on the beach, the Dunkleosteus was a truly horrific fish of nightmares, and we could have had long scenes underwater of cage diving, terror and uncertainty. But Jurassic World's writers seem as resistant to extinction as the fictional scientists, and it becomes repetition with more teeth, and so, despite loving dinosaurs, maybe it's time to stop. Resistant to extinction behaviour needs drastic action, and, like getting help for addiction or a phobia, Jurassic Park and Jurassic World need to change trajectory. Phobias of spiders, dogs, water, crowds, and many other things, alongside addictions such as gambling, drug use, alcoholism, are all perfect examples of something that is resistant to extinction. People who have the stimulus of a phobia will continue to withdraw even though they're never attacked by a dog or harmed by a crowd, and when it comes to addiction, even losing their house might not stop a gambler from an extra scratch card or bet on the horses because just they might win a few quid. And despite waking up in urine and faeces and being told you have liver failure by the doctor, the fact that the positive rewards from drinking and the addictive feeling means that the alcoholism will continue despite the negative reinforcements, and the good sides has gone and it's only the negative, but still the behaviour is resistant to extinction. Basically, the negative doesn't stop the addiction, it becomes resistant to extinction based upon the hypothesis that we do something for reward which is positive. Instead, we're still doing it even though it's causing us severe harm. And in Jurassic Park and Jurassic World, despite declining box office and negative reviews, we keep getting the same kind of movies. Now, money makes the world go round, so as long as there's profit to be had, Universal will keep making Jurassic World films, but be it from an artistic or fresh perspective, the series' stagnation is now resistant to extinction. Rebirth could have been a proper reset. It could have been Jurassic Dark, with mercenaries on a secret mission set entirely at night, with all sounds, POVs, and been something genuinely intriguing and frightening. It could have been Jurassic Underworld, set purely in the ocean with the challenges of cave diving with beasts, or swimming with massive Dunkleosteus which were slowly chomping through a sub. It could have been Jurassic Restart and looked at the prequel before Jurassic Park was launched and how these labs worked, the corruption that was going on, and how the labs fell into chaos, but the dinosaurs were still taken off despite the warnings. But basically, any ideas such as that are just gone, and we get another, let's go to an island, there's dinosaurs on there, and there's an even bigger dinosaur with more teeth. This time, it's the most amazing dinosaur ever. It's going to be so scary. It's the same thing every time. John Hammond tried the park, but it failed. Simon Masrani ballsed up Jurassic World, and whilst I love the idea of a lab for the worst of the worst, even Black Widow has shown that we're just repeating the same ideas with a slightly different character, and it all has the same resistant to extinction outcome. Hollywood is in a truly sad time of creativity, with everything seemingly a sequel or a remake, and everything is about repackaging great ideas which have already been done. I mean, take Alien Romulus, for example, for everything that was great in the old movies that was repackaged into a new movie that didn't really bring anything new to the table and just recycled every single idea poorly and inserted it into a timeline rather than give us something bold, new and fresh and take a risk. And Jurassic World is doing the same thing. A new Rex but bigger. A mutant, but even bigger than the Indominus. Another island with yet more carnivores. 3 Spinosaurs. And it's a shame. Sometimes, be it phobias, addictions, or designing parks and trying to get science to win over nature, you need to look at what isn't working and just stop. And personally, I think it's time to think differently about the long-term survival of the Jurassic World franchise, because just making more teeth isn't keeping control over making interesting dinosaur movies. I love dinosaurs. I'm always going to watch films with dinosaurs. And I suppose in a way I'm falling into that. Even though they're not great, my taste is resistant to extinction and I'm still going to watch it. Anyway, that's it for this week's video. So remember that psychology is cool. Please like, share and subscribe, as more subs means more vids, and even leave a comment or start a discussion, as healthy debate, I always say healthy debate, is always welcome on here. And as ever, until next time, I'll catch you later.
Taking dinosaurs off this island is the worst idea in history of bad ideas.